Hello and welcome to Shadow of the Cast, a Marvel Champions podcast. I'm VillainTheory,
I'm Nelson.
and today we have a very special guest.
D20, hey, let's go.
Ooh, yeah, let's do it.
Coming in hot, let's go.
Yeah, today I'm excited to have you here. The people are excited. We have, I'm going to say, a record number of comments, and we are discussing Nemesis sets. How do you feel?
I feel good about this. I mean, obviously, all my fans can fit in a small room usually, so it's excited that all of them came and flooded your comment section with questions. So I'm very excited. There are dozens of us, so I'm hyped.
dozens of us.
Dozens.
No,
dozens
we're
of
really
us.
excited. We're really excited to have you on, especially like with your experience in, let's say, Nemesis sets, because I have heard and seen the rate that you pull Shadows of the Past is unparalleled, I believe. So
Yeah, the chat for live streams just thinks I stack the encounter deck full of Shadow of the Past cards, because I do have several. I have 3 copies of it for various reasons. And so they think I stack it all the time with 3 of them. And truth be told, it's just one, and it just somehow works out that way every single time. It's borderline frustrating at this point.
well, but that just means you're the expert and you can talk to us about what you know. I'm pretty excited because we kind of wanted to talk about the Nemesis sets as we approach Standard 3, which is coming out in the Age of Apocalypse box. Standard 3 is going to make us see these Nemesis sets more and more frequently as they get pulled out. So I'm really excited for Standard 3 and a little bit scared of some of these Nemesis.
I have a weird feeling that I'm going to be the opposite, and Standard 3 will, for me, result in less Shadow of the, or not Shadow of the Past, less Nemesis sets being pulled, and for everyone else to be more. So everyone can understand my pain, and I get to enjoy the game how everyone else enjoys it.
Nice. It is funny, I have built you decks to make to use in challenges before on your stream, and I'm watching you play like my Valkyrie deck, and I'm like, well, he's put Shadow of the Past once now. He's not going to put it in any of the other games, and then it's like, oh, scoop this game. We actually had a comment, not a question, but a comment from one of the viewers, and St. Matthew says, his hands are like magnets for Shadow of the Past, and I thought that was pretty good.
Love it.
So before we get onto Nemesis sets, why don't we talk a little bit about, who you are, D20? Because the people want to know. And while I think a lot of people who do listen to the podcast already know who you are, there's probably some things they don't know. So I wanted to ask you a very personal question, maybe a bit too personal, but it's coming from Brachiosaurus7, and they ask, what's the reason for going by D20 Woodworking instead of your true name of D20 Hot Takes?
Oh, yeah. So D20 Hot Takes does not show up in the YouTube algorithm as well as D20 Woodworking, it turns out. See, what I do is I trick the woodworking community that there's going to be some great dice building, and instead they just get card games, and then they're very confused. But now they're confused, and they're kind of paralyzed in that confusion, so they watch a lot of my video, it feeds into the algorithm, and then my viewership goes up. So that's really been kind of the secret.
Genius, honestly, genius.
Yeah, I'm playing 4D chess all day, every day, man.
He solved content. He solved YouTube. But the name does come from woodworking, right? You actually do have some woodworking stuff. I think I've heard you say, like even on Etsy and places, right?
Yeah. So so in actuality, the way this all got started was, God, 7 years ago. I've always played board games, and I wanted to make woodworking accessories for board games. So I've made like card holders, I made token holders. You might have seen them actually in Nelson's stream. I think he has the token holders out randomly. But yeah, so I started making them, and I was like, well, let me make an Instagram account where I show these off so I can trick people into buying these and I make money. So I did that, and then I would show them off and whatever. And I started getting more and more into the board game community on Instagram. And then I was like, okay, so I started interacting with more people. I eventually met Nelson, and started interacting more and more and more. And then right before the pandemic, I got really into solo gaming, and I was like, oh, this is pretty sweet. Like, so I got more and more into solo board gaming. Then the pandemic hit, and everyone got into solo board gaming. And then I was like, well, let me make a YouTube account, and I kind of kept growing from there. And all the time, I was like, man, I should really change this name, D20 Woodworking, to be more like align with what I do. But the problem is everyone just knew me then as D20 Woodworking, and I felt like it would just hurt my, like, not image, but like my branding. Yeah, I felt like it would hurt a lot. So I was just like, well, I guess this is what we are. So this is what it is. That's how it all got started, and why it sticks. And if I ever think of a better name, I'll switch it. But I don't know. I feel like it just stands out, and people now know, okay, D20 is Mr. Hot Takes. So
That is funny. I mean, when I first heard of you, it was actually when Tony Tales was still making content, and he was like shouting out different content creators, and he was like D20 Woodworking, and I'm like, that sounds like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of show. But the name did stick because clearly I have watched a lot of your videos and things now, and suddenly we're on a podcast. So that's pretty interesting. One of our other questions, and I don't know if this is applicable at all here, is from someone called rscott222, and they ask, how many woodworking videos do you have as gaming videos? Do you still have any woodworking stuff? Like, is anything on YouTube at all these days? Is it, what is the no?
Yeah, there is
just
not.
a complete scam.
100% scammed. Scammed everyone good. I have thought about that if I ever hit like a certain subscriber count, like I don't know, 10,000. Actually, realistically, I'll put this out there now. If my subscriber count surpasses Nelson's, okay, when that happens, we're putting everything into it. I will then do a live stream of woodworking and then make that a video, right? And I'll do hand tool woodworking, not even power tool. So we'll do like the old fashioned type of woodworking, and we'll build, I don't know, a card holder or something. I don't know, something that something as small as that will take me like hours to do, but I guess that's what we'll do. So there will be one woodworking video then.
That is cool. That is a good exclusive. So you guys heard it here first. If you want to see that woodworking,
everyone's clamoring for that, right?
Yeah. Now, I just hope that means that people are going to just be subscribing to you and not unsubscribing from me. That's the goal here.
No, yeah, okay. So that's a caveat. If Nelson's numbers go down, while I do appreciate it, no, that's not the right way of doing it. So his numbers still have to go up.
Oh my goodness.
Only if I wielded that much power, Nelson. Only if.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, so one of the next questions that we got, which I want to hear from you, because I've told this story a couple of times on stream, but I want to hear your side of the story. How did you and I meet?
It was through
do you remember
the Avengers group? What the heck did we call ourselves? Board Avengers. Thank you. That's the first time we met. I don't remember the very first time, but I remember because I worked first with Roberto, who, we did an interview with him. And this is when it was still all through Instagram, which was crazy to think about that we did interviews that way. And I remember I had to find like a spot in my house that didn't look terrible. Like, my early videos of the basement. And I remember doing the interview with him and whatever, and it was really great. And he's like, "Oh, this is fantastic. I love working with you, whatever." I was like, "All right, cool." And then he didn't talk to me for like months. And I was like, "All right, that's fun." And then he's like, "Hey, I'm inviting a group of people on like a group chat, like to talk about board games." And I was like, "Well, sure." Like, I don't know what I have to offer here. Cause like so many of these people like Meg and whatnot play like thousands of games or whatever. And I'm sitting here in my collection of like 60. And I'm like, I guess I could be useful and whatever. But Nelson was one of the people on there. And I believe that was the first time we really chatted. I think that's it. Okay.
Yeah,
thank God.
Then,
all right.
Yeah. And then at that point I had just started playing Champions. And so I was playing Champions. I wasn't doing any streaming at the time. I was actually doing a podcast rather than any of the YouTube content. And I got into Champions, and I got into Champions hard. And knowing Jason was, a big player of Champions, Lord of the Rings, and Arkham, I reached out to him because I was like, I think I really kind of want to play some Lord of the Rings. And so he coached me through how to buy Lord of the Rings, because this was before all the repackaged content. Yeah, and I straight up did. I was buying stuff from Australia. Like it was wild. And then they announced the repackaged content, but we started streaming Marvel Champions together. And then we're like, wait, we should actually do this. And then that was I don't want to say 3 years ago now, but 3 years ago now. And here we are.
That's wild. It's wild to think about.
Wow, that's a superhero origin story if I've ever heard it. That's
yeah. And especially when like you watch the old videos and you see how like bad our setups were. Like it's wild that like people watch that stuff.
I just remember mine is bad.
I just remember the first stream that we did, we were supposed to go live. I think we finally figured out the technical issues about 40 minutes into the stream and finally went live. And then it was the frame rate, which you want to see like 30, potentially up to 60. I think the frame rate was like 7. Like you were getting like 7 frames. It was like so choppy.
At least it's a card game.
Yeah, right.
Oh, good stuff. That was fun. Those videos are still out there if you can find them. That
I might go
they're not
looking.
they're not on my channel. They're on a
Nope.
different channel. So
Secret channel.
let's see if anyone can find them.
Yeah.
Cool. So I have a question for both of you guys, but it's also kind of for me, and it's kind of more of a suggestion in a way. We've had this kind of from two people. We have Hector Jr., who says, I want to see you guys do a free-player game against a hard villain. But then Tedubby says, would you consider doing a reality-style show episode where you free-play multiplayer with interviews intercut in the gameplay? So, what do you guys think of that?
That's really funny. I really like that idea. I would love to take on a hard villain with the two of y'all. That'd be a blast. The reality shows with interviews. Now that's a neat idea. I like that.
Reminds me of like Jerry Seinfeld does like the comedians in cars or whatever when they're just like doing something random, but it's supposed to be like an interview. It'd be like that, right? And so whoever's like trying to focus on their turn, we're just bombarding them with questions the whole time.
I'm going to say, when Age of Apocalypse comes out, do you three want to fight the final villain on expert mode together at some point?
Yeah, I'm down.
Cool. We don't even know what that villain is yet, so it could be, it could be Ronan times 2. It could be something special.
Are we doing hot takes right now? Are we going to guess who it is?
Why not?
I say Professor X.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting. I've had a lot of people say Onslaught. I don't know if I know the villains well enough, so I'm going to kind of jump on the bandwagon there.
I think that's a safe bet too, yeah.
Nice. I'm just hoping. I don't know. I realize that I have no knowledge about Marvel, the universe at all. I just learned today that Claw and Claw are the same person from the Black Panther movies. So here we are.
There's a lot to learn.
So there's that. But no, I would absolutely be down to take on whoever that is. That'd be really cool if it was X. I'd be down for that. But we're if the first two scenarios that we've gotten preview articles for are an indicator, it sounds like we're gonna have a challenging couple villains to go up against.
Yeah, it's looking exciting. So the other thing you're known for, I would say, perhaps your greatest. I was going to say meme D20, but I think that'd be doing you a disservice. I think maybe something you're particularly known for, however, is you have one hero who stands out above all the others that you champion when other people maybe aren't so kind to them. And I'm going to say I have a question here from someone called D20 Woodworking, which I suspect could be you. And they say, who is the best hero in Marvel Champions, and why is it Valkyrie?
So that question actually comes from D20 Woodworking, and that's my German counterpart. He's an up and coming streamer and content creator. Definitely go check him out and subscribe to his channel. Really good stuff. But anyway, so obviously Valkyrie's the GOAT. We all know this. It's weird that I've had to make this argument so many times. I feel like I've done it over and over on my stream and whatnot. But honestly, all right. So let's actually here. I'll give you an exclusive, like real talk for a second. When Valkyrie first came out, I remember she came out. I played her, and I was like, "Yeah, she's fun. I enjoy Valkyrie." And then went on the internet afterward, as I always tend to do, and read about other people's opinions. And all I read was, "She's the worst hero in the world, and she can't do anything." And I was like, "What am I missing? Like, obviously, I must be missing something," because everyone came to this conclusion very quickly. So I started playing her more and more, and I was like, no, like this is fun. Like I'm enjoying her. Like there's some difficult parts, sure, you have to navigate, but this is straight up fun. I'm having more fun with this hero than anyone else. And I kept playing her over and over and over to kind of like figure out what everyone was talking about. And to me, it seemed like just a couple people said it and then got kind of regurgitated, because I would ask people on the internet, like, well, why do you think that? They're like, well, it's because she's the worst. It's like, well, support your argument. Like, I'm for your argument if you could support it, and they couldn't. So I was like, well, they would ask me why she's like not the worst. And I was like, well, let me tell you why she's actually the best. And I would just like go on with that. And then it just kind of became a running thing. But I do believe, I mean, I think she is the GOAT. I think she is the most fun hero, one of the most fun heroes in the game. She's not my number one hero, but I think she is one of the most fun heroes in the game.
Not your number one hero. I don't think I've ever heard you say that. That's pretty. I know there's a lot of Valkyrie fans out there going to be devastated and heartbroken, but hopefully they can find the strength to carry on.
It's just me and D20 Woodworking. That's it.
I mean, I have mixed opinions on Valkyrie. I feel like she's very flawed, but she's fun and interesting at the same time. As long as in solo play, if certain things don't come up, I do have, some things I could say. But she's got an interesting design, and hopefully we're going to see her keep to grow and improve with her expanded card pool. We just had a lot of new upgrade stuff drop for aggression, which, she likes upgrades. She has Deathglow. We'll see where that goes. Now, I have been charged with a mission by Brian T. Stewart, who says, set him straight on Star-Lord. And 0 is 9 says, what's the most fun hero and why is it Doctor Strange? So you've got a lot of people here arguing for other characters. So I've got to ask, do you have a problem with Star-Lord?
No, actually, I don't. I think Star-Lord's fine. Like, I don't think he's like amazing or anything, but I think he's interesting. I like his design in the sense that I think you have hard choices to make of when you want to use his special ability, right? Because I think a lot of people tend to spam it. They're like, oh, I could get all these cards in for free, and then wait, I'm playing heroic now. So I feel like a lot of people make that mistake, and that gimmick is fun and it's interesting, but then I get kind of bored with it because for me, I fall into one or two patterns of Star-Lord. It's either the rush strategy, which he's very good at, or just a leadership strategy with him. And then I played a lot. And, I don't know. I mean, he's no Valk.
I mean, it hurts me, but you kind of said some nice things kind of in there, and we won't have to end the podcast prematurely. We'll say that.
That's good. That's good.
I just played a Star-Lord Problem Solvers deck, which I paired it up with a Captain America, and it was a blast to play. And I, succumbed to the folly of dealing myself all of the encounter cards versus Thanos, and that did not go well.
No, that's not. Don't do that. Apologies. I was going to address Doctor Strange as well because I forgot that was in there because he's just in the trash, so I don't think about him.
That's weird because that's what Valkyrie is.
Ooh.
Unless you hide your valuables in the trash, I don't know why she's in there, but sure. Doctor Strange belongs in the trash. He's the most boring hero. I just have to throw that out. God, he's so boring.
I feel like I should defend Doctor Strange, but I started off enjoying him when I first played the game, and then sort of I played more heroes, and he's definitely moved down my list quite significantly, I would say. But to follow up on Valkyrie, hopefully I'm saying this right. I should say this: when we got all these questions through the YouTube posts community section, it doesn't typically display the display name. It displays kind of the short name, the kind of the @ handle. So hopefully this is okay for you guys. But I believe the name is Macandi. And they said a little bit, asking about why Valkyrie is a GOAT. But they have a follow-up question. And how much do you love that people are unsure if you're serious or sarcastic when you advocate for Valkyrie?
I do not understand why people would be questioning my love for Valkyrie. I think it's self-evident that she's obviously the GOAT. I've again made this argument several times on videos, repeatedly, and even on those videos, people go, he seems to be over-exaggerating or playing a character, and I don't understand that at all. She's obviously the most powerful. She can swing and do the most damage. The game designers, and we'll get into this in a second, I'm sure, the game designers knew that she was the strongest because they gave her the hardest Nemesis set out there. And the only reason you would do that is because she's so incredibly powerful. So even the game designers know that she's the most powerful hero out there. So it's crazy to me that people don't fully believe me when I say this, because obviously she has no flaws. And her biggest weakness is the Nemesis set, but they had to do that to tone her down because she was decimating the game.
Mm.
That is definitely one way to look at it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, Valkyrie's Nemesis set is tough. Do we want to talk about? Let's just talk about that because I feel like that's a fun thing to talk about because Enchantress is not a fun minion to run into. And so these Nemesis sets, whenever you draw Shadow of the Past, there are other ways that they can enter, but the main way is drawing Shadow of the Past. You put your Nemesis minion and the side scheme into the deck. And we get Enchantress here, which is a 2/1/5. When revealed, search the encounter deck for discard pile and set aside area for a copy of Seduced and add it to your identity. And so already off the bat, we have a minion side scheme, which is, tempo in the villain's favor when they put 2 cards on the table. But Valkyrie starts with a 3rd card on the table, which is another attachment. And Seduced says that you cannot make basic attack or attack events. And as an alter ego action, spend a lightning and a mental resource to discard this card. So not only are you getting, +1 card, right? If you're taking Shadow as 1, you get an extra card. You get a 3rd card. And there are other Nemesis sets that do that, but oh my goodness, Valkyrie is not nice.
It is insane to me how that works because Valkyrie is all about, basic attacking for the most part. So that's her biggest kind of hook. And Seduce says, you now, can't attack basically. And how does she remove threat? Well, she's got an upgrade that kind of goes on the board, and you have to defeat a minion by attacking to get the threat off. So, okay, you need to go and remove the attachment, but the side scheme says you cannot remove the attachment. So you cannot defeat the minion to remove the threat, to remove the side scheme, to remove the attachment. It's like this perfect loop that sort of counters itself. And this is my hot take, and I love the game, and I like everything the designers do, but how many games do you think they played with this and this came up and like it was tested? Because to me, this is maybe D20 is right, and this is the only way to hold her power back. But for me, this was pretty incredible.
It still amazes me to this day. And like you all, if you know my play style, I don't really like going in alter ego in general. I think it's a waste of time. You go hero and you go whole hog and you just go for the win and pray. And especially with Seduce, like having the flip down, and then she does scheme for 2, and she's putting more threat on the main scheme. And like you said, she's not great at thwarting unless somebody else is doing it for her. So I feel like they just sat there and said, okay, she's really good at attacking. She's really good at attacking. Let's just take it away and see what happens. And that's what they did.
Yeah. I do think that the power of this Nemesis set drops as you increase player counts, because the side scheme comes in, it's 2 hinder 1, so it's really not that big of a deal unless you're sitting there with just Valkyrie at the table, who really struggles with taking that 3 threat away, especially when she cannot attack. So yeah, it's a tough Nemesis set, and it's kind of interesting how it just directly counters what Valkyrie is trying to do, which is something that I have appreciated seeing a rise in Nemesis sets throughout the game's history. At the beginning, we're getting Vulture with Quick Strike, and it kind of works. It's introducing the Nemesis mechanic into the game. But now, as we get closer and closer to the present, we're seeing Nemesis sets like Valkyries, which is directly countering what they want to be doing, or even like Phoenixes, where you're bringing out something that feels super tuned into what the hero is doing. And I feel like the design team has just gotten so good at figuring out ways to mess and make the Nemesis sets just that much more interesting for that specific hero.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the modern Nemesis sets are like really, really interesting.
Well, I wonder if Valkyrie was like the turning point on this. So like kind of like what you're saying, like the prior ones, a lot of them were just like, yeah, it comes in with Quick Strike, or it does like a retaliate or whatever, right? And then Valkyrie happens, and everything after Valkyrie, not everything, and most of the things after Valkyrie now relates to kind of like what the hero is all about. Like one of my favorites that maybe we'll talk about later is Spider. I think Spider they did a really good job with Morbius. But it's like a choice you get to make. If you use an upgrade as a resource or whatever, right, it does damage to you. And I like that decision making more than straight up to like, she can't do anything, right? That's lame. But instead now it's a choice, and I have to weigh the cost benefit of it.
Yeah, and I'm just thumbing through some of the Nemesis sets now, and everything leading up to Valkyrie, if you take the name and all the flavor away, if you just look at the straight mechanics, they could be pretty easily flipped and flopped throughout the heroes. Where like, hey, this Quick Strike, if you use a basic action, you take damage, you can't remove threat, that kind of stuff. Maybe there is some loose theming in there, but it does feel like Valkyrie may be that turning point where we start to see some hard counters, because right after that is Vision. And Vision brings in Ultron, and that feels very unique and very like, this is Vision's Nemesis. This is what Vision does, and you don't want this mechanic for anybody not named Vision.
Yeah, so it makes it feel like to me that they were, again, trying to make that switch, and they were still figuring it out, and they probably erred on the side of caution, like, well, we don't want the Nemesis being too easy. So, because then people will complain like, oh, this Nemesis doesn't even count. So they went the other direction, which maybe was a little too much. But if you're going to make that mistake, obviously, Valkyrie's the hero you do it with, because she is the strongest hero in the game. So,
I have actually heard Caleb talk about Enchantress on a podcast at some point. I can't remember where, so I feel like I need to shout someone out. I'm not sure who it was. What podcast it was. It was like, a couple of years ago or something. But it's interesting because Enchantress is actually not a unique minion in terms of that. It has a unique symbol, yes, but it's actually from a modular set from Mad Titan's Shadow originally, and so are half the cards. Basically, all the cards except the side scheme in that Nemesis set. And I believe the kind of philosophy behind it was something like, this is kind of her nemesis, and it shows up in the comics and whatnot. Why don't we you go ahead and use this one? But I wonder if that's why there's such a difference, because it wasn't necessarily specifically designed for Valkyrie.
Interesting. Yeah. No, because Enchantress is her own mod set. Same with Vision, actually, right there, back to back. You get Ultron, which pretty much Ultron, at least very very similar cards to the core set Ultron. That is interesting. Oof. So I guess I don't know if we've actually dived into it. Jason, being the expert, when you draw that Shadows of the Past for Valkyrie, what is the go-to strategy to combat it?
It's pretty simple. So I draw it, I stare at it for a little bit, I reevaluate my life, and then I scoop my entire hand and I start from scratch. That's the general strategy. Now, the only exception is if I'm playing Justice, right? I still have a shot of probably getting it done, or I'm playing Leadership and I already have the allies out there. I feel like, okay, I can probably get it done. If I have the best signature ally, Annabelle Riggs, out there, then like there's a shot I can get it done. But yeah, she's something. Even I can't even say anything about her. So that's kind of how I approach it. It's just like, it's not even worth, like, even if you manage to survive all of it, it doesn't matter because the villain's just running roughshod on you at that point, and it's just what's the point? So I tend to scoop a lot. So
yeah, Nelson, I actually have a question for you here, and
alrighty,
this is about D20. So he once challenged me to make him a Valkyrie deck that could beat the core set, and we're talking, Claw, Ultron, and everything there. And I was like, okay, we're going to like manage this Shadow of the Past. So I built a deck that kind of had a few shield cards, spy cards, had Spycraft, which is a Justice card which says the treachery comes up, you can kind of like veto it, you can skip it for a different one. And I would like you to guess how many times D20 had a spy on the board, Spycraft in hand, and he didn't play it, and then Shadow of the Past came up.
One. This feels like a trap question. I'm not gonna lie.
The answer is I don't remember, but it was at least twice.
Nice. Oh my gosh.
It was a speed run, and that is a slow strategy, so I'll let it slide. But it did make me laugh. It is such a pain, and I don't necessarily think scooping was even the wrong answers even then, because it is such an interesting Nemesis set.
But the important part with that villain is that the deck did it, right? I mean, in the end of the day, Valkyrie still beat the 3 core box villains in less than 2 hours. So it was still a good deck.
She's the GOAT.
She's the GOAT.
So
I will convert all of you.
Yeah. The propaganda is spreading. So we've heard from D20 talking about how, Valkyrie may not be his favorite Nemesis set, but really enjoyed Spider's villain. What is your kind of, when you think of an excellent Nemesis set, where does your mind go?
I actually really like Nebulas, and I don't think people will expect this one, but I think it's got some really interesting interactions. So
you scrolled a Nebulas. I was not expecting that.
A lot of the things in Nebula sets say Gamora does this or Gamora gets that. And I play a lot of 2-player, and my partner loves playing Gamora, and I really like Nebula. She was in my top 15 my favorite heroes video. So it works out really well when those kind of things start to interact. So there's a card called Lethal Weapon, which you attach to Gamora, and then she just gets an attack boost. So if you've got her at the table, and then we've got cards like Old Rivals, which make Gamora attack Nebula. So if there's a Nebula player at the table, she's going to start to hit the Nebula player, which I think is a really fun twist on Shadow of the Past.
Yeah. I think Jason and I actually ran through a campaign where we were playing Nebula Gamora, and we were just like hoping that we would pull out the Nemesis set because like, ooh, Gamora gets boosted here. Let's go.
Yeah, it's like there's the side scheme is bad for Nebula, but good for Gamora. So there's that tension. Like, get rid of it. No, keep it.
Which like thematically makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of competition between the two sisters, and so keep it. No, stay. And so that's nice. Yeah, Nebula is a good one. We have so many forms of Gamora and Nebula in this game. It's wild.
Yep.
I really do like the Venom mod set. I also want to say Phoenix's mod set I think is crazy and really fun. But Venom just coming in with all of the enraged symbiotes and then having his obligation start pulling from the Nemesis sets. But the Frenzy side scheme I think is really fun when you're playing someone like Venom Goblin, where threat cannot be removed while a symbiote enemy is in play, and then you just play heroic for the rest of the game. Like just fun interactions between modular or Nemesis sets and villains is also something fun to like mess around with.
Can we have a quick side note about Phoenix? am I the only person that thinks that her Nemesis is not that bad? Like, I feel like it's always talked about. It's one of the hardest Nemesis sets out there, and I feel like it's not bad at all.
I think the issue with Phoenix, especially in a solo game, is you're pulling out another villain, right? You got a 2/2/12 steady toughness villainous, and if you don't have an answer to that, then it can be really tough. And if you pull it late in the game, that's fine, whatever, because you can just throw that 12 damage at the villain and be perfectly okay. If you pull it in a 4-player game, 12 damage in a 4-player game is not as big of a deal as in a solo game. And so I like I don't think that the Dark Phoenix set is that challenging. I think it's really interesting, and adding the alternate loss condition I think is really cool. But I don't know if I subscribe to the belief that she's one of the hardest Nemesis sets in the game.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I actually kind of think she is pretty tough, but it kind of depends on the situation, When Phoenix came out, I decided to try and stress test her against Ronan, which I don't do for everyone because I played him a lot and he's an experienced. But I put her up against him, and every time Shadow of the Past came up, it was just because of all the pressure he has and then the pressure of that, it was almost always causing me to lose. So I think if you're really under pressure, because it is quite significant and a big resource sink, it can make a big difference. But if you prepare for it, and again, especially late game, because she can set up pretty well and she can get pretty strong, then it's definitely not too big of an issue. So I would say if I was to compare in a solo game, all the heroes and how much all the Nemesis cause of problems, I agree. I don't think hers would be the worst, or maybe even the second worst, but I do think she is a little bit dangerous.
Interesting, because I know Consume the World is always brought up, and then people see the alternate loss condition, they go, "Oh my god, this is like terrible." I've never lost that way from Consume the World, or at least I don't think so, because I never have to worry about it because Scheme's not going to go on it, and it's easy to keep down and whatnot. And I get it with Dark Phoenix, but maybe it's because just how I play Phoenix. I'm getting to Unleashed pretty quick in general because I want to get Unleashed and I'm just going to go and win. So we have Telekinetic Attack that does 9 damage. And I'm like, the enemy's mostly done. Plus then I swing for the other 3. Dark Phoenix is done, right? We're done here. So maybe it's just because of my playstyle, but every single time Dark Phoenix has come out, I agree that if you draw it really early on, you're not built out. Yeah, it's a whole different ball game. But even with that, as long as I have that attack, we're good. So.
Yeah, it's chewing through that damage. I also don't necessarily think that the Amplify can be an issue, right? If you are forced into Alter Ego, if you're forced to let Dark Phoenix scheme and you don't have an answer for that, I think it's more of a surprise loss. I don't know if I've ever lost to Consume the World either, but when it comes in with 6, you lose at 12, Phoenix is scheming for 3 with the Amplify plus a boost card, like it gets scary pretty quickly if you get into this situation where it's like, I have to go to Alter Ego. I don't have an answer for Dark Phoenix, but I feel like the scarier part of the Nemesis set is the minion rather than the alternate loss condition.
I do have a question about Dark Phoenix for you guys, and I'm sure neither of you are going to know this, but I'm hoping it will be funny anyway. So my understanding is Dark Phoenix is Phoenix, right? That's her. Yeah. So how does your Nemesis coming out, how does that work? Are you sort of punching yourself in the face? How would you kind of rationalize what is happening here? Is it a different version of her?
So, oh my goodness. So I did an entire episode on Dark Phoenix for Critical Encounters. So I got my notes and
oh, wow.
Basically what it is spoiler alert, Dark Phoenix is a clone of Phoenix, and Phoenix was hibernating in like the Gulf of Mexico or something for pretty much the entire 80s and 90s of the comic book run. And then when they killed off Dark Phoenix, that was actually just Dark Phoenix's clone. And now we have Phoenix.
Naturally. Yeah.
That's a 40-minute episode condensed into like 3 sentences. Comics are weird, I'm telling you.
I was going to say multiverse, but yeah.
I kind of like the idea of sort of punching yourself, but I don't recommend it, and I feel like that's probably more in line with what the designers were going with. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Phoenix is in the running for one of the most thematic Nemesis sets. Are there any others that jump out to you and scream like theme? And we kind of talked about this a little bit with, tying into the hero, but I'm curious if either of you have a comic book or a Marvel background knowledge that when you saw something, you're like, yes, that works really well. I guess it's also a question for the listeners.
Good question.
I mean, I've seen the movies, more than I've read the comics. We'll put it that way, and a lot of them do jump out. When I was newer to the game, seeing a character that I recognized from the movie in the game, that was really fun, and also vice versa. But, when I'm playing 4 and Loki shows up, I think that's really fun.
Loki. Oh gosh, I Loki.
We actually have a question about Loki. If you're so interested, D20, because this one's kind of aimed toward you.
Oh,
So,
good.
CBAV2674 asks, with Loki being D20's least favorite villain, I don't know if that's true, does the Nemesis Loki have any redeeming qualities?
Yeah, I think the Nemesis Loki's fine. So when Loki would be defeated, you discard the top card of the encounter deck. If it's a treachery, heal all damage from Loki. I think that's not terrible. I mean, there's obviously can be a decent amount of treachery cards there, so it happens over and over. I mean, the villain version of it, the problem is not just Loki coming back and over and over. But I haven't played Loki in a little while now. But one of the cards wants you to get a side scheme or a minion out. I forgot which. And there's like 2 of those in the deck. So like you can just like run through the entire deck and then get an acceleration token. I think it's side schemes. So that's more of an issue with Loki. But I think as far as the Nemesis set goes, I agree with you, Villain, that thematically it's cool, right? Thematically it makes sense. Thematically it's fun. So I do enjoy it in that regard. So yeah, I think as far as a Nemesis set goes, it's cool. Just I would never make a villain out of it, and I especially never give him an Infinity Gauntlet. But here we are.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, him with that Infinity Gauntlet's tough.
I have to say, the Loki Nemesis minion infuriates me, but I think that means it's really thematic. I'm always getting the wrong thing. He's never getting defeated. Like, oh, I'm an illusion. Like, okay.
Designers are over here listening like, yes, we nailed it. Like,
got him.
They did.
I want to say too, like when we talk about theme and whatever, well, one of the more frustrating ones, but thematically, I guess it kind of makes sense, is like the Hulk's Nemesis. I think Hulk's Nemesis is really rough and really hard, but it should be hard because Abomination should be like a really difficult villain and whatnot. And I wish he had more health to combat Hulk. That's the only change I would make. But the fact that you probably want to have a whole strength deck because of everything Hulk does is based off of strength, and then that kind of works against you, I think is cool. And then Total Destruction with his side scheme is rough because Hulk is thwarting for 0, which is a really strong amount to get 2 off. So
yeah. This actually kind of ties into Kraut Bammer's question, which is, what is secretly the most brutal Nemesis set? Everyone knows Phoenix and Valk's Nemesis suck, but what is the one that's a little less talked about and are appreciated for its brutalness? When I read that question, my mind went to Hulk, and so I'm kind of curious if I think that, and also just like looking through, Villain pointed us to a page on Hall of Heroes which just has all the Nemesis sets, which is
who knew?
Nice resource.
I did.
But Hulk has the most boost icons added into the deck because every single card that gets put into that deck has 3 boost icons, which is kind of okay with Hulk being how beefy he is with his 18 hit points, unless they're being pulled on a scheme, and then it's GG's. And also just, I mean, a hazard icon on 2 threat doesn't sound tough until you realize the only real way that you can remove threat is a suborbital leap in his kit, and then it's like, okay, cool, like I guess we'll remove 5. Like, I don't know. I think Hulk is one of the more like sneaky, brutal ones.
He needs it to balance him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
100%. Hulk is one of the strongest heroes, so it makes sense. He's probably number 2 behind Valk. I do agree with Hulk. I also want to throw out Rogue. I think Rogues can be really tricky because it's doing that whole Mystique thing where it's putting cards into your hand. And I don't know about you all, but what throws me off all the time is if all of a sudden the main scheme is getting a lot more threat than I thought it would. And hey, what does Misled do? Well, it enters your hand, you place 2 threat in the main scheme. That stinks, right? So it's just that type of stuff throws you off. Plus, I think the side scheme, has an extra boost icon or whatever, not boost icon, acceleration icon. So that's adding more threat. So I feel like Rogue just kind of throws you through the loop. You can handle her all right, but man, just Misled. I hate that treachery card.
Yeah, I think that was a thematic one. It kind of mimics the modular set, and it's like, she's Mystique being sneaky and all that, but it is quite dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have 3 choices for this question, and I don't know which to talk about. So 2 of the ones that stand out in my mind are Groots and Quicksilvers.
Groots, yes. Quicksilver's mean too because you add so much threat. Oh yeah, those are good ones.
Groot, for some reason, also punishes the whole table severely. Like, if you can't deal with it, it's like, hey, this is terrible for Groot, but guess what? You brought your friends along; they can suffer too now. And like, okay, I'm just a tree here trying to do my best, guys. So the signature sort of villain, the Nemesis villain, is Fernax, and he says after he activates, deal 2 indirect damage to each player. So he's got 2 attack, but then he's doing 2 damage to every player as well, indirectly, which is quite special. And he's got 6 health, which is doable. But then you've got the side scheme, which is just like, you know what, that wasn't enough. After the villain phase begins, every player's going to take 2 damage. Why is that?
Yeah.
That's a really good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and then kind of the mirrored image of that for a threat is Quicksilver's, where you come in, Avalanche comes with Insight 2, then the Extortion, which is the side scheme, comes with Insight 1 with a Crisis. And so, especially in solo, you just throw 3 threat on that main with a Crisis, and you have to go through 2 threat before you can even touch it. I've lost games because of Shadow of the Past. I wasn't expecting to get 3 threat, just added, so...
But then he's got the Earthquake Treachery, which I also want to touch on here. It's a Treachery, Insight 1, not that bad. When revealed, discard 2 cards from your hand, not that bad. But you also have to exhaust your identity. So it's hitting you on like 3 different levels with threat, discarding cards, and exhausting your identity. And then there's also, it can come in as a booster effect. And what that does is it exhausts you, or you have to pay 2 resources. So it really hits you on every angle, especially as Quicksilver, who he can ready up. But if you don't have a way to ready in your hand, then in the hero phase, you can be kind of stuck because you can't trigger your response to ready up if you're not ready in the first place, because it's response to being exhausted. So it's special, and I have a lot of bad memories from both of those.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Who do you think is the weakest Nemesis set in the game? Asked somebody at VillainTheory submitted this question, I think. So
He sounds like a jerk.
Yeah, he does. But let's talk about it anyways.
That question. All right, I'll go first. I actually think Scarlet Witches is the easiest. The reason being is because it's not hard to do the damage to Luminous. So Luminous only has 5 life, and after she activates against you, well, she's not going to activate against me because I'm just going to murder her with Hexbolt or one of my other attacks, because I still think it's very easy to get enough damage with 1 Hexbolt. I think it's just exhaust if you have to. The next evolution can be bad, obviously, but it can also be slightly beneficial to you, depending on where you are in the stage. That is just adding the number of boost icons on each encounter card by 1. Obviously, if you're doing the face melt card, which I can't remember off the top of my head, molecular whatever it's called, so you're dealing 5 damage, and then like you draw a 3/3, but now it's a 4/4. I mean, we're looking at 13 damage now, which can one shot some villains if you really wanted to. Obviously her attachment I think is a little worse with magical suspension, and chaos manipulation is fine, but I think in general it's not hard to get around Luminous in the next evolution. I think they're pretty easy for her.
Yeah, I'd agree. It very rarely causes me any major issue.
Do you have a go-to easy mod set?
I have a couple. I'm going to say probably the easiest one has got to be Wasps, I think, because Beetle comes in with 4 health and 1 attack, 1 scheme, which is, there's a forced interrupt that either you have to spend a physical or she gets shuffled back into the encounter deck. But she's such a weak encounter card, it's normally better to put her back into the deck, and then it's weakened the encounter deck for you. She helps you. He's like, I don't think that's how they intended it, but I really don't think she's that bad. Guard can be annoying if you're trying to rush, that's a pain. But really 4 damage for Wasp is kind of like nothing. So yeah, just go back in the encounter deck, sure. I take that over a Shadow of the Past. Well, I guess I already got that, but I take that over Under Fire or, Fanaticism or anything like that, anytime. And the side scheme is pretty pathetic as well. It just says, as an additional cost for each hero to make a basic attack, they must spend 1 of any resource. Now, in multiplayer, that's a bit annoying, but Wasp has really good defense and basic forwarding, so quite often you can rely on your events for damage anyway, so you don't necessarily need to really get rid of that side scheme even.
My thought when I saw the question was Black Widow. I don't necessarily have an issue with Taskmaster. He gets +1 scheme, +1 attack for each upgrade he control, but he only has 4 health, and so if you have something that you can build around, whether that be the Widow's Bite, stunning him, then you have a basic activation to take him out, or you can just let him sit there stunned, and then you can kill him off via other means. Side scheme is just a 3-hinder 1 and a acceleration icon, and I don't really have ever any issues taking care of threat with Widow, and then just a couple of weak minions. So That I think Black Widow is probably the least of the issues. I kind of wish we saw a little bit more thematic tie-in with Taskmaster, the villain, and the Nemesis set. It feels like they're kind of operating under two different design spaces, and so it would have been interesting to see Taskmaster has something to deal with, flipping you, and then whenever you flip to hero form, you have to take damage or something like that. Just because I do feel like they have also gotten better as the game has progressed and getting like heroes and allies or villains and nemesis sets to feel similar to each other.
Yeah, I'd fully agree with that. And I really do like how they kind of mimic things, especially in the modern game. I think, the X-23 ally is coming up and does lots of redding when it defeats minions, just like X-23. So I feel like that's really very cool. I actually want to bring up something that's more kind of a factor in multiplayer, is that the Nemesis sets from the Sinister Motives wave do not scale per player. The side schemes are all flat threat. So when I play a lot of two-player and stuff, I actually find those ones are pretty forgiving. I mean, I think some of them are forgiving anyway. Miles Morales gets Prowler, who has Stalwart, but that doesn't matter because you just defeat him. Ghost Spider's got that side scheme, Regenerative Research from her Nemesis, which has, when the villain phase begins, heal 1 damage from each enemy. But if you're just taking out the minions, sometimes it's more cost-effective to, let the villain heal for 1 and just keep damaging rather than, deal with 5 threat. Especially if it comes out in the middle or end of the game. So I feel like those ones are designed to be a lot more multiplayer friendly than most of the others.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, David Jacobson asked, is there any mod set that is disruptive enough that you have to build your deck around it?
No, I don't think I do.
Do you think that changes with Standard 3, where we're going to see it every game?
As someone who gets Shadow of the Past every single game, no. For me, it's Nemesis sets to me is always the thing that's just a pain and throws and derails your plan. And to build around the derailment, I don't think is generally the best strategy. I think you should always plan around the villain first and foremost. Because if you're just waiting for a Nemesis set to come out, you're kind of just like floundering for a while. So I don't think so, because there's only a handful of Nemesis sets that really make you like discard a card, like Beetle, for example, makes you discard a strength resource. Like that's not a common thing. Most of the time, it's just all right, remove threat, punch the Nemesis in the face, and get rid of them. And I feel like most heroes can do that reasonably well.
It's interesting because I'm sort of the opposite here. I already sort of talked about how I tried to build in Spycraft to save you from Shadow of the Past. But I would say in 90%, not probably like 99% of cases, I don't do that. Sometimes with Phoenix, I want to make sure, do I have some damage sources? Because what if that big attack is not sort of available to me? Can I deal with it? But honestly, in most cases, it's not something to kind of specifically build around. I would say Valkyrie is probably the one, if any. But yeah, in general, you kind of have a game plan, and if you base it on something that might just not happen, it's going to be generally inefficient in a lot of games.
Mm-hmm. I could also see Phoenix being one of those that we start to see a little bit more teching against once we have a pretty much guarantee that it's coming out after 3 to 5 turns. Right, we're going to get Dark Phoenix, Standard 3, bringing it. And so we have to have an answer to that 12 damage, because it will also be interesting with Standard 3 to see the average length of game until the Nemesis sets comes out, or the Nemesis minion comes out, because I think that will give a lot of information, right? If we're consistently hitting our Nemesis set on turn 5, that's pushing a win condition for a lot of heroes against a lot of matchups at turn 5. Or if we're getting it turn 2, no, not turn 2, but like turn 4, like maybe there are some of these that really are going to start to disrupt your plans, and we're going to get a lot more of these Nemesis sets with guard, or ones that don't allow you to thwart. I think are going to be a lot more, you have to just be cognizant of them as you approach those counters needed to put your Nemesis set into play.
Yeah, it's interesting that there will be less counters to the Nemesis coming out, because all the treachery cancels won't work when it's kind of an environment, I think it is in play, that's kind of the thing that says, okay, now your Nemesis comes out. So yeah, it's going to be very fun to work around.
I feel like if I made by turn 5 and I haven't won the game, I've played poorly. I'm just that type of player that I'm just like, I'm so like quicker pace that I'm thinking, yeah, okay, if it comes out, like I'm pushing for the win anyway at that point. So it'll be interesting. And it makes me wonder too, because I know I play the game very differently than a lot of people do. A lot of people enjoy building out, and it's probably the smarter way to play the game. when I have done build out, it's much stronger and you can handle much more. But I wonder if the new standard set will push people to kind of play the way I play and how people will react to that. They're going to be like, oh, this is D20 was onto something. They're going to be like, this is terrible and not fun.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how the strategy changes because, I mean, the crazy players out there who enjoy Standard and Expert 2, they put more stock into specific cards. It kind of makes you play specific directions. And I think Standard 3 is going to do that, although, just kind of in a less brutal fashion. So I have a question that Cards and Dice asked, and I think this is really fun because I've started doing this and I've had a lot of fun with it. But have you used any Nemesis sets as regular modular sets for scenarios? And if so, which ones?
Yeah, I'm really easy. I've never done it. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think some modular sets kind of tee off of what the hero is trying to do. But if you find another hero that kind of does the same as that, not the same as I think, but the rough idea, I think that's an interesting idea. It's definitely worth trying. It'd be fun to just do an entire encounter deck of just modular sets and see how poorly that goes. So.
I was gonna say it would be really fun to do like the hood and use like all your random sets as mod sets, and you can pick out some brutal ones. Bring Dark Phoenix out, bring Mr. Sinister out, bring Juggernaut, Abomination. You got some beefy minions coming in at you. That could be kind of fun.
I think that sounds really fun. So I think I've done it very briefly. I don't know if it's a challenge from your Discord server or something like that. I kind of want to link this on to another question we received. We actually received a couple of questions sort of about design, and I don't know if you guys ever think about card design much. I actually really love like design and stuff in general. But people are saying, what are some of your hopes for future uses of Nemesis sets, both in design and being incorporated into the scenarios? And we're kind of talking about how we can incorporate them with this. So would you guys like to see them included more like this? Do you think that would be fun?
Yeah, I think so. One of the ideas that I've always had that I thought would be interesting in like a small design space they could do, and I don't know how it would work in practice because I'm not a card designer. I will not pretend to be. Is if they don't do a lot with enemy in play and out of play space, right? So the only thing we really do is bring the Nemesis out of play into in play, and then that's kind of it. And then victory cards go out of play. I think it'd be interesting if you had a card that basically had your Nemesis villain, right? Your minion, Nemesis minion, come out and kind of like poke damage at you like a little bit and then like pop out.
Yeah.
Like, and that's all it did. Like it didn't stay on the table, just it jumped in, kind of annoyed you, and then jumped back out. I thought something like that would be interesting. And obviously you have to balance it proper ways and make alternate things, but I think something like that is a space that they can work in where cards pop in, pop out.
That's really cool. That could be standard 4, they could make that part of it. Any set aside Nemesis minion coming in briefly.
Just call it the D20 standard set and we're a good fan, right?
if it was a D20 standard set, it would just be all Shadow of the Past.
Yeah, that's all it is.
One of the interesting design spaces that actually the team behind Con of Heroes did with last year's con, they usually will come up with a standard replacement set, and the standard replacement set last year was called Standard Rivalry, where it interacted with your mod or your Nemesis set very much, where like a boost card would be like draw a card from your Nemesis set and apply it as the boost, and then it gets shuffled in. So you're not pulling everything in all the time, but you're pulling it in sporadically. And we've seen cards, which I think is in Mystique, it's somewhere in the Sinister Motives. Mysterio. I think it's Mysterio who pulls in your Nemesis minion. And I feel like we could see a little bit more of those where either you pull in the side scheme. Not all of them have treacheries, I don't think. And so that could be a little challenging to design around. But if you could start pulling in random aspects off of the Nemesis set, I think that would be pretty cool.
I really like that. I mean, that kind of, standard set is exactly kind of what I was envisioning. So I think that's really cool that they did that. And yeah, Mysterio, I think the card is called Old Grudge, and I really like it. There's a couple of things in Sinister Motives. I think the Down to Earth set plays with obligations as well. Not exactly Nemesis set related, but kind of. It's one of those negative cards that comes with your hero. So I like anything that plays with that space. I'd definitely like to see more things that pull them out, interact with them in different ways. And there's a lot of Nemesis set cards which say, ooh, if your Nemesis minion is in play, do this really cool thing. But guess what? You've defeated them like 4 turns ago, and now it just surges. And so those things don't get a lot of use. So maybe an environment that says if that comes up, you find it and put it in play briefly. That would be really cool. I would like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, what if it was an environment that anytime a card says surge, you pull a card from your Nemesis set instead of surging from the encounter deck. You surge from your Nemesis set. You're set aside.
Be interesting.
That'd be mean.
Yeah.
I like it though.
Oh my goodness. All right, let's finish out this Nemesis discussion before we kind of go into our closing with then there's Wally's question, which I thought was super fun. It is, what would be your nightmare scenario? So your least favorite hero, least favorite aspect, least favorite villain, and least favorite mod sets combined to form the nightmare scenario. And the twist that I will throw on here is that you can use mod sets that are Nemesis sets, like we were kind of talking about earlier, to kind of tie it into the discussion. So what would that nightmare scenario look like? Let's start with you, Jason. What would you do?
Well, okay, I have to think about this a little bit. So, I mean, obviously, my every nightmare I ever have in Marvel Champions begins and ends with Doctor Strange, right? So he is the nightmare. Just playing him is a nightmare. I don't want anything to do with it. Least favorite aspect, honestly, with him, it doesn't really matter. Because it just him in general is bad. I would say my least favorite though is probably leadership, which I actually don't mind, but not great. Least favorite villain, we're playing against Loki, right? Absolute nightmare scenario fuel right there. So with all that being said, what I would say is I don't know. I'd have to really look through a lot of these mod sets to see the specific one. But I will say if there was a mod set that said all you can do is play from the invocation deck, and that's it. That would be my nightmare. That'd be a living nightmare for me because I want to do more in the game than just play the same 5 cards over and over. Now, ironically, that mod set would just be the same way you play Strange anyway, so there's no real difference. But I think that would be the worst. And I mean, I guess the easy answer too is you put Valk's Nemesis on anyone. It's just a bad time, right? You want to deal damage and you just can't.
Yeah, Valkyrie's. I was thinking about what would be the mod set, and if we're including the Nemesis ones, I was thinking, yeah, Valkyrie's mod set is because the character I had in mind. I guess I'll go next. I don't like to pick a least favorite hero, but when I think about it, I would probably have to go with Hulk. And I know he's kind of like a almost like a cult classic in a way. You know, he's the underdog, and people like to support him. But I feel like aside from power level, his cards are boring. It's like I do damage or I pay a lot and I remove threat, and it's just like a couple bits, you know. And I know D20 had a video, I think, on the obsolete heroes and things. And if I had to pick one that I thought was the most, it would probably be Hulk. I'm sorry to all the Hulk fans out there. You know, I do enjoy playing him. I built a couple decks for him the other day, actually for someone from D20 stream, and he's a fun challenge. But outside of, you know, kind of being so bad in some situations, have to make him a challenge. I don't really want to play him. So sorry, guys. Least favorite aspect is tough for me. My least favorite aspects are justice and protection, but I also have some of my favorite decks in those aspects. So it's not, you know, as a blanket one, because so much of it is defensive and I want to hurt people. I've got to say protection. But I love a lot about protection. I love repurpose, readying, just the idea of exhausting to defend hurts my soul. And that's kind of what a lot of its cards combo. So that is probably my least favorite. Least favorite villain is Collector 1 by an absolute landslide. I don't know if I want to discuss it. I don't want to deal with the collection taxing me, give me my cards back, go away. And yeah, if I'm playing Hulk, my least favorite mod set is definitely going to be Valkyrie's Nemesis.
Yeah,
that's like complete shutdown.
I think maybe one of the more challenging games you can play, if I was setting this up, would be Collector 1 with, let's say, Valkyrie and Venom's Nemesis set. Right, because you get all of those enraged symbiotes. You cannot thwart. You can't attack. You have to put them in the collection, and then you have to figure out how to pay for everything Valkyrie is trying to do, and pay for getting stuff out of the collect. I don't want to talk. You're right. No. We're done talking about Collector 1. I got upset there. I'm sorry.
You could do Nebula with Collector 1 too. Like Nebula's whole idea, what she's trying to do, is just gone. So or Black Widow.
Oh yeah.
Just like, okay, that's cool. What my whole gimmick is gone for this game. Not even a section of the game, the game.
Yep. Yeah, if I do what I'm forced to do, I lose the game.
So this has been a really fun episode. I want to say thank you, D20, for coming on. I mean, you clearly have very bad taste in heroes. Star-Lord isn't your number one character, so, you know, that's upsetting. But the rest of the podcast has gone pretty well, I'd say. So no, it's been really good to have you.
Part 2, we'll see. We'll just argue this out. That's fine. That's fine. We could do that. That's no problem.
So coming up next, we have an episode where we look at both the Web Warriors and the Champions, kind of like how we've done on Avengers, look kind of back at those heroes, Guardians. how do they hold up in the modern game? What new cards have helped them out? All that kind of thing. There are some really fun heroes there that I think are very, very popular. Some that may be a little bit controversial. One in particular comes to mind, so I think that'll be exciting. Didn't actually come up today. Very interesting Nemesis set with the Green Gobbler. So I'm excited to talk about that.
Nice. Yeah. Well, nice little tease. And as always, if you have questions, you can email them in and we will answer them on the podcast. You can send those emails to shadowthecast@gmail.com or Villain Theory. I'm nominating you for this task, Villain. You're going to be posting a community post like we did for this episode, where you can submit your questions on the community post, and then that will also be appearing on my feed as well. So hopefully that is enough to put it out there so you don't miss that. Make sure that you send the questions in, because we do love answering those.
All right. So first off, thank you both of you for inviting me on. It's really cool. It's really cool to be a part of this podcast, be a part of this community, and I'm really appreciative of you guys inviting me. I'm appreciative that also I was the first guest, which is really cool. Hopefully this sets the standard for everyone else. They just have to slightly walk over the bar that I have set on the ground to become better content creators. So good luck to everyone after this. So I appreciate it. And I'm going to plug myself because I'm self-centered like that. And if you want to follow me on YouTube, D20 Woodworking, also on Twitch, D20 Woodworking, all the links and stuff. I'm sure you can find it around there somewhere, but appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Thank you, everyone, for listening as well. And we'll catch you next time on Shadow of the Cast.
Bye-bye.
Dramatic exit. Dramatic music plays.